Hello and welcome to Let's H. I'm Hush Joel. Please scroll down and click on the Read More, visit some of the links, and become a patron on Patreon for more quality content. Today we're continuing the Angels Season 5 reviews with episode 11, called Damage. This honestly is not one of my favorite episodes, and I think it kind of shows why they shouldn't have banked so much on having crossovers and using that to sell the show. It hadn't really helped Season 4. In fact, there was nothing that could help Season 4. I would have been glad to see them completely go away and not have any crossovers in Season 5. And just concentrate on the characters that they had. Unfortunately, they seemed intent on doing this as much as possible, perhaps as if they had in mind, ultimately, a large-scale crossover with Buffy now that the actress was free from acting in the series that had just ended. However, as the next episode, You're Welcome, lets you know, it's very bad to bank on the assumption that you will have a crossover, especially if you're not sure if you can get the actress. The thing is, this probably would have been a much better episode with a follow-up that actually had Buffy crossover and do an episode. As I said in the review for You're Welcome, which is one of my least favorite episodes of Angel or any of the Buffyverse, it's a story clearly written for Buffy that only works where it does because Charisma Carpenter is a good actress and has a great chemistry with the rest of the regular cast. Unfortunately, it doesn't manage to tie up anything that they introduce in this episode, which is a huge mistake. They should never have done this episode, and especially not tried to put cameos and crossovers and all this other shit in it if they didn't have the ability to tie it up in the next episode. See, it revolves around this girl named Dana, whom at first they think is possessed by a demon, but it turns out that she's just a slayer. We have a potted history of the slayers, as if somebody watching this show didn't already know what they are, courtesy of possibly the least welcome crossover ever. Andrew, this painfully mincing stereotype, and I mean that in every sense, like annoying gay boy, annoying nerd, annoying everything. It's painful when he's on the screen, and it shows a massive contrast of what Buffy was trying to do in its last couple of seasons and what Angel was, on the contrary, trying to do. It's especially discordant because Angel is just a more adult program. It doesn't have time for the shit that Andrew represents, and especially the stunts that he tries to pull. I can see the actor is trying, but he neither has comic timing nor the acting chops to pull it off, and he has no chemistry with any of the cast. It seems very realistically awkward, and nobody really seems to want him around, understandably. This is the kind of thing I mean when I say a lot of the Buffy stuff seemed to be not particularly that diverse, nor particularly enlightened. People always go on about them being super progressive, about having a main character be a lesbian or whatever. Well, technically bisexual, but whatever. As we all know, people on TV audiences can't understand the concept of bisexuality, but regardless, they went for the easy gay, which of course lesbians always are. It wasn't particularly revolutionary, it wasn't particularly progressive, and characters like Andrew, who seem shoehorned in and portrayed as insultingly badly as possible, that's nothing new or different, and to be quite honest, he's an insulting character. He's not even fun. Like, you can do camp and do it fun. You can do mincing and do it fun. You can do nerdy and do it fun. He's none of those things. He is an eyesore. He is horrible every time he's on the screen. You just want him to leave. The one scene that was remotely amusing was when he tastes a penny because Spike describes the smell of blood as metallic. Spike's story continues to develop in this episode, and he does get some good lines and some good moments of development. It seems, however, that he's restricted by the script from doing a lot of things that would otherwise be natural to him. He has some amusing back and forth, and of course some tension with Angel, but it doesn't ultimately come off as seeming very like Spike. There's just too much in the episode that's unlike him, and too much that seems more like his days on Buffy, where in between episodes he might change completely who he is. They do try for some modicum of consistency, which is good because, as I've said before, the consistency that exists for Spike in Season 5 Angel makes him one of the best characters in it. However, there's just a lot of stuff that doesn't fit or doesn't suit him, or is just dumbing him down so that the Slayer in the episode can get in a few shots. This is just goofy. This isn't the Spike we know. He ends up getting toned down. I don't really know why. Could they not afford the fight choreography? Did they not want to try? Whatever the reason, this episode just doesn't work on a number of levels, and having her actually be a Slayer just kind of demonstrates how irresponsible Buffy and the rest of them were, and why their whole stupid plan wasn't going to work out very well. There are hundreds or thousands of potential Slayers who were activated by their dumb spell. Wesley tries to claim that it's a sound stratagem, but it's actually really not. It's irresponsible, it's dangerous, and it probably would have caused a huge amount more chaos than it did on the show. We see Buffy diddle-farting around Europe and dancing. Yeah, because she could afford to be dancing at a nightclub with the Immortal, instead of dealing with these real issues that she is responsible for doing. Pretty much this entire episode makes all of the people that we're supposed to like on Buffy look like huge assholes, and to be honest, I never really cared for most of the cast of Buffy, but I certainly don't care for them after this episode. The whole thing is just so problematic, too. There are questions asked about the benefits of being on the inside of Wolfram and Hart. Are they really doing the right thing? The unfortunate thing is they keep asking these questions and they never come up with sufficient answers. It's almost like it's required for them to ask it in every episode, and in every episode it's also required for them to avoid answering it in any meaningful way. The conversation is always derailed before it's ever addressed. This is the 11th episode in the season. By now they should have at least started to deal with it in a more effective way. And trying to assume that Buffy's gonna send potential Slayers to go and claim this psychotic Slayer who has killed various people in the city, killed them in cold blood, that's not gonna happen. You don't have an organization. The Watchers Council is gone, decimated. All you have is a ragtag group of assholes trying to organize something. You're definitely not gonna get a dozen barely trained assholes with powers they don't understand to stand up against Angel, his friends, and a SWAT team. And I might add a double-pronged SWAT team of double size. That was stupid. They did not take her from the force of their power. They took her because Angel was stupid enough to let them. I mean, I don't know, maybe he thought they had a point or something, but this little nut job cut off Spike's hands for no real reason. They just did it for a shock in the episode. It really served absolutely no purpose. And she killed a bunch of people. That's not gonna go unnoticed. It hadn't gone unnoticed. There were police responding to all of these incidents. She had escaped from a mental hospital. People like that don't just drop off the radar. And I certainly fail to believe that the Slayers were just gonna take her away without the proper facilities. Yeah, good luck with that, guys. Great idea. This is kind of why having Buffy in the next episode, because this order apparently came directly from Buffy, because she doesn't trust Angel anymore because he's in with Wolfram and Hart. Well, that would have been something great to develop if you were going to get the actress. But if you weren't sure you were going to get the actress, don't write it as if you're going to develop this and bring it to a resolution in the next episode, because you're banking on something that may or may not happen. You can't rely on an actor's availability. It isn't like she cancelled at the last moment. She made it very clear she wasn't going to do it. They had more than sufficient time to plan for it, and they didn't do it, making this episode an embarrassing mistake more than anything else. It doesn't make any sense, and it's not consistent with the characters. Why would Buffy say that? Why would Buffy do that? How would she even know much about Wolfram and Hart in the first place? She's barely holding it together as it is. There's no way she can actually be that together right now. And she certainly doesn't want to make an enemy of someone that could help her in organizing these Slayers that she activated, and in so doing threw a lot of the world into chaos. It may not be addressed or lampshaded, but that's exactly what would have happened. Ignoring it does not make it not a thing. And at the end, while it's nice to have Angel talk to Spike and be more honest about their common history and their past and who they were and who they are, the conversation goes somewhere especially inane. Like, Spike claims he never looked back at the victims. 7 years of Buffy the Vampire Slayer would seem to contradict that. In fact, I can think of more than a handful of situations where he very specifically did look back at the victims. There's this contrast between monster and innocent victim, and Spike says, well, so were we once upon a time. And it's kind of true, but Spike has more of a point than Angel. This Slayer is a monster. just because she's psychologically unbalanced, just because she went through torture and was treated badly and it caused her to have a snap, that doesn't mean she didn't kill people. That doesn't mean she's not dangerous. And while Fred brings up the, oh, what are we going to do, kill her thing, looking at some of the other beings that they have fought against, it's not that different. So she's a human serial killer. It doesn't really matter that she's a slayer. She has something wrong. She's killed a lot of people. There's very little hope that she's going to even come back from that. And to be quite honest, I didn't have an investment in her. Yeah, it was sad that she had a life like that, but most of it seemed like them milking it for all it was worth. She's not a good person. She's not really redeemable. Just because something bad happened to her does not forgive her automatically for doing horrible things to people. It also doesn't make her mind any less broken because of what Buffy did. Just the whole issue is so asinine and so poorly dealt with. What do the Slayers think they're gonna do? They can barely train each other. The only way this would even work out was if they had Deus Ex Machina powers, which I suppose they do sometimes, but the show was not on air. Buffy ended last season. There's no reason to bring in this plot now. And yeah, Wolfram and Hart sucks. It's a terrible place and it's doing weird things to Gunn, amongst others. But yet again, it's never actually addressed adequately in the episode, and it's getting tiring having it brought up and then just completely thrown out for everything else happening. They ask the question, oh, are we as good as we think we are? And then something stupid happens and they aren't able to address it. The thing is, Dana and her story could have been compellingly presented, but not with the way they went about it. She could have been someone that we sympathized with, someone we wanted to see redeemed. But they just half-assed it. It really wasn't that interesting. She wasn't a fully fleshed out character and she couldn't be. Yet again, also the main cast of characters take a back seat to shitty guest stars and poor development for the few characters that actually get the attention. The episode tries, and you can see it trying to be dramatic and gripping, but it's none of those things. It's a boring slog with a couple of genuinely funny lines and good interplay, but more painful attempts at humor that don't work, and lines that are awful and very unlike any of the characters. To be quite honest, there's no real way that Andrew is anywhere believable working with the Angel crew. Nobody would take him seriously. They could get the information that he brings from Wes, from Angel, from just about anybody around them, because they all should know this by now. So, overall, Damage, not a good episode. In fact, it's one of the worst of the season, and it's not for lack of trying. They clearly had an idea behind the terrible execution of that idea. They just unfortunately brought in a lot of stuff that they thought would let them coast, like a guest star. Did they really think the audience would latch on to any guest star from Buffy? Andrew may have worked with the rest of the Buffy gang, but he doesn't work with the Angel gang. I mean, to be honest, some of the Angel gang don't work with the rest of the Angel gang. Banking on cameos to carry your story and make the audience more interested is never a good idea. In this episode, or in the next episode, they do that far too much, and it doesn't work in either one of them. Spike has actually become a regular on Angel, and as such he has received consistent treatment. You can't say the same for cameos, especially not Andrew, who is god-awful. But then, I never really cared much for that style of writing anyway, so your mileage may vary. My opinion, though, give this one a miss. Spike's story doesn't actually develop that much in this episode anyway, and there's nothing really contributed to. In fact, this is kind of where his story gets dropped in favor of what they were clearly leading up to as a big Buffy guest star episode that never ever happened. It may not have been good if it had happened, but it would have been better for the story, I believe, that they were trying to tell and that they intended to tell, and at the last moment they changed. Not for the better. And that's been this episode. Again, check out the links in the blurb, become a patron on Patreon, and I'll be here next time for another review of another episode. You're welcome. See you again. Bye.